Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in and for being patient with me for the new video. This time I want to do another track project walkthrough with you, and it's about the track Complementary Senses. This track just recently came out on the Japanese label mulemusiq and is part of my Upside Down EP. And it's kind of house-ish, kind of techno-ish, and I also recorded my traditional Chinese Xiao flute on top. So yeah, the rest is digitally produced in the box, and I'm really happy to show it to you, so let's jump right in. Welcome to my project. I'm going to play the track real quick so that you know how it sounds like. Alright, and then let's go through it step by step. First, I think it's important to mention how I structured the project. It's like I mostly do it always, I guess. And first of all, I have these groups. On the right side, as you can see, I have a group consisting of bass and drums. Bass is like my kick drum, my bass line, and drums, my drums. And then in tonal there are all harmonic elements, basically, like the flute and synthesizers. And then of course I have this Atmo group, and that's it pretty much. Then for arrangement purposes, I very often, especially if it's not like an hypnotic techno tool or something like that, I use these locators by Ableton, which are really nice if you don't always want to scroll up and down the whole project to navigate through and prepare some drops or breaks or whatever. I think it's very helpful. Just right click, add locator, name it, and that's it basically. And yeah, that's it. I think I have only one return. For example, here, the Valhalla vintage verb, which is very elegant. I love it. It has a great quality and sound. And that's it. So let's jump right into the first group then. It's the bass group. And here I first have my ghost kick. The ghost kick is not really playing, you cannot hear it, it's just there for my sidechain, and therefore it only goes to the synths, and I can then grab it with another group, another lane, track, whatever, and use it for the sidechain. The real kick is this one. As you can see, it goes into the bass, which then goes into the bass drum, and then into the main, which is a master basically. So this is definitely playing, and it sounds like this. I mostly build my kick drums with the Kick 2 synth. Sometimes I also do it with other synthesizers, such as the Operator. I also did one with Vital already, but here this is my standard tool. I changed the length of the envelope to 633 milliseconds. I designed the pitch envelope like this, with a little bump inside, and I think I didn't really touch the amp envelope in this case actually. So yeah, it's really basic, this synthesis. And then I put this beautiful distortion plugin on top. Nowadays I would probably do it with the raw stock plugin by Ableton, but as I didn't have the raw plugin by then, I basically used this Devastor 2 distortion, and in this case I just turned up the preamp, and you can see here it's clipping. That's how these overtones are created. Let's play the kick without the distortion. It's way cleaner, but I wanted this little dirt inside, so I decided to add it on top. So it gives it this bumpy feel basically. And then I did little arrangement moves with this low pass filter, like right in the beginning, for example, when the track is building up. I like it sometimes to emphasize. Yeah, and then it comes real, basically. And then here also I have this move again, but also lowered the volume. Yeah, that's it for the kick drum. And then here I very often do these like kind of counter bumps, which are giving kind of a counter pulse against the kick. It's just on the offbeat basically here. So together it sounds like this. Very, very basic. And then you can see it's also built of the kick 2. In this case, I have a shorter envelope, which is 342 milliseconds. The pitch envelope is also so that I don't really have a harsh transient, just to avoid any clicks which remind us of the kick drum itself, so that there is a difference in between these sounds. You can see it's different. Yeah, so it's really just a pulse. And I also have the devastor on top of this one. Without it, it's like this. So it also just gets bumpier with the devastor on top. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Here I also didn't really change the amp envelope as it was already enough to design the pitch envelope. Then the bass, that's the one of the most important elements in this track. It's the lead synth in a way. And here you can see I used the operator, which I do very often. I have this additive synthesis and this like tiny detail on top, which is almost not audible, but these 3 oscillators are the most important ones, so let's just go through them step by step. I will deactivate the rest of the effect chain also, just to show you how everything is built up. So here, when I just play the lowest sine, it's really just this sine tone. Also the envelope is not really changed, so it's super basic. And then little sparkle on top, chorus 8, so that it's higher and adds this synth character, so that it's not only a bass line anymore. Here I changed the envelope. The most important is that it has a short attack and a long or kind of longer release. And then this one gives it a metallic feeling, I think, because it adds some kind of weird overtones. Without it, it sounds super clean, and with it, it gets this little interesting timbre. Yeah, and then this on top. Also here, you see I made the attack not super short, but still short. And it has a longer release than the oscillator B. Oscillator B is 1.47 seconds. This one is 4.32. And then this one on top is, as I said, almost not audible. I could probably just not have added it. But let's see what it actually does, so that we know where it comes from. So if you know it and you really are looking for it while listening to the sound, you might be able to hear it in the low mids, but it's really subtle. And then I added this echo, which I also automated. As you can see, it goes up and down again. So here without, here with, to just give it some movement. And then I EQ'd it slightly. And I have some arrangement moves here with the filters. So here, for example, to filter it out. And then also here there's this high pass one to also fade it out. And here. And then we have this vintage verb, which gives it the room. And an important note is because it's the lead synthesizer, but also the bass line. Because of that, it's important, as I knew also that this track would be pressed on vinyl, and in general stereo bass can be not really of advantage, I would say. So you can do it, I already did it, but it's better technically if you don't, sometimes. So I just did a low cut in the reverb, so that everything below 420 doesn't get reverbed, basically. Like this, it's cleaner, because I don't need any stereo information in the bass. It's not really relevant anyways. Then I also have this limiter to remove some unwanted peaks, basically. And then I have the bass line with the ghost kick, which I mentioned earlier. I always add an EQ, because if I don't, and I have this very short attack, there will be some clicks added, which I don't really want. I mean, it also happens when you set the EQ. This one is a low pass at 50 Hertz, where my kick drum is also peaking, so I don't take the high information. I only take the information where the kick drum is interfering with the bass line, basically. And like this, I can ensure that the click which is added with the sidechain is very, very quiet and not really audible, so that I don't add any unwanted information to the mix. As you can hear, it's still clicking a little bit, but really, really slightly only. Now I turned it off and it's louder. It's really just a slight difference, but I think it makes the difference. And then now the next one is bass, which is kind of designed in a similar manner to the other main bass and lead synth, but I basically just copy pasted the track, but I removed all the other 3 oscillators and only left this sine one to imitate the rhythm of this bass rhythm, but not to have any information of the lead synth, which makes it a lead synth. So let's listen to it with the kick drum. Like this, it just sounds like a bumpy, groovy rhythm. And all together, that was the bass group. Now let's turn to the drum group. The drum group consists of different elements. For example, this snare, I called it lo-fi. I think it's not really lo-fi, but whatever. Here, this one. I used additive synthesis here. You can see the algorithm, it's additive. And then I will play it without all that stuff and also deactivate these effects over there so that we can see how it's built. So this is just a noise transient. I deactivated the filter so that I really have the noise information also. And then I added a sine tone, which is at chorus 6 and detuned, for the first one for the first oscillator, it doesn't really matter which tune it has. I mean, of course, it matters in terms of it should fit to the track. But when added together with the other ones, then in some, like this detuning and stuff, it starts to really matter. So let's listen to this one. So you can already hear there's some kind of tonal information coming in. And then, together with the third oscillator, it gets more metallic. And now it really is metallic. And as you can see, these are just sine tones. Nothing interesting, just a noise, sine tone, sine tone, sine tone with different kinds of envelopes, but all with a fast attack, like immediate attack basically. And then afterwards I chose which frequency range I want to use from the signal. I decided to remove all this high frequency information and just get this metallic kind of sound. And then I added a drum bass to have more punch. Yeah, and that's it. Then I send it into the Valhalla Vintage Verb. And voila. Here we go with a hi-hat, which I synthesized in the manner how I showed it in my last video with the hi-hat synthesis. I will show you step by step how it's built here as well. Oops. Okay, one moment. So the first one, the transient, really just a little click transient, which is also consisting of the noise, then sines. As you can hear, it's already a little bit metallic. Then the noise tail, like a shaker. Then some overtones. And then some more overtones. I will add somewhere we need a bit more volume because it's very quiet. So let's just activate the utility in the drum bass. And then I will play it again. Yeah, and now all together. And now here I did one move with the shifter in frequency mode, which is very important that you set it to frequency mode, because when you have it in pitch mode, it will be a little bit delayed, the signal. So then you would have to move the clip or the MIDI notes to the left so that you are still on time. So what I mostly do when it has to be on time, I just use the frequency mode. And then I turned on the LFO very, very slowly so that it's pitching down and up slowly. Then I have the EQ. I removed the belly over here. Then, of course, I made it louder because, as we already saw, it was a bit too quiet in the beginning. Then I added a delay for the groove. And I also arranged a little bit over here with a low pass filter. And then also with the utility, I faded it in a little bit. And I also added a limiter to make it louder again. But that's it already. And then what I did to achieve all kinds of other sounds, it goes for the right, for the other right, and another hi-hat. I just copy-pasted the hi-hat and just changed the patch to make my workflow a little bit more efficient. So let's listen to the first ride. It's a very artificial ride. And as you can see here, I also have the transient, noise, tail, overtone, 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 and actually these are also overtones. So because ride is in general a drum which has loads of overtone information, and because of that it makes sense to just create different layers of overtones. I will deactivate the EQ here and also the shifter, and then yeah, I think the rest I will leave inside to keep it loud enough. So let's listen to the transient. That's the transient. Here the noise tail, very soft, with this LFO on top, the LFO automation on the volume. As you can see, I added a shaper on top also to make the LFO swell, get stronger, always when it hits. And then overtone, really weird buzzy one. Then here again, for example, for this overtone, for the FM overtone, you can see I really used FM synthesis. Like this, it really gets this weird buzzy timbre. Then here the overtones, some other ones, both additive synthesis, and then another frequency modulated overtone patch. Yeah, and that's all. That's how it sounds all together. And now let's activate the shifter, because in the end I realized, okay, the pitch of this ride is just not really fitting to the whole track. So I just decided to change the pitch. And sometimes I design a drum or whatever, and in the end, when I'm finalizing the track, I realize, okay, it's maybe not fitting completely, so I just adjust the whole pitch with the help of the shifter if if the patch is too complicated, because to go into all these single modules, it would just take up too much time, change the whole timbre and everything, so I decided to keep it simple. And that's how it sounds now, finally. Now let's also compare it, like in the original pitch, how I designed it, and then with the adjusted one. Yeah, so when we solo it, we can hear, okay, these overtones, these tonal informations are a bit dissonant in comparison to the rest. So and that's how it should fit. Alright, and then here I have another ride, also designed in the very same manner, just different pitches and everything in total. But it's really the same patch, basically, just little things changed. And also without the shifter afterwards, because this one actually fits. So then the next one is the hi-hat hit, which is also originating from the original hi-hat patch. It's almost like a mini crash or open hi-hat or something like that. And let's listen to the single elements. Transient, noise tail, and that's the wonky one. Here I added an LFO, quite fast one, with 14% amount, so that it gets this kind of comic touch. And that's a clean one. So together it's... So you can hear under the surface that there's this weird, vibrato kind of happening, but it's really hidden. So it's really just a little wonky gimmick, which you will probably only hear if you know it, but it adds character to the whole thing. And all the rest is basic stuff again. Drum bass on top, and an auto pen, which I didn't use, so I can just simply delete it. Yeah, and then the shaker, this is really basic, just a white noise Without the EQ, less soft. With the EQ, it's very soft. And with the delay, it gets this groove. Without the delay, it sounds like this. And yeah, some arrangement moves once again with the low-pass filter and a utility which I also didn't use in the end. I probably decided otherwise during the process. Then I designed a swish reverse. I don't know, swish is just the word which I used. I don't know how it's actually, you would call it, noise swell, noise filter resonance swell, maybe something like that. So here I have this noise node, and without the filter, I used the filter envelope inside the operator. Without it, it's just like that. And with the filter envelope up to 100%, and with the frequency placed at 608 Hertz, it gets this juicy transition. Pew! When I would turn the envelope to -100 and then up the frequency, it would be the other way around. So always very important to really turn the filter envelope to -100 or 100, because otherwise you will not hear what you were doing. It's a very important information, I think, which I didn't discover right in the beginning, so I better mention it. Then I, of course, also added an EQ8, because without, it's too bassy in a way. And then here I have the so-called Atmo drum. I was already wondering where I got it from, but I really don't remember. I must have resampled some kind of signal, but this is not really traceable for me anymore. So let's see how it sounds. Oh, better when it's on, yeah. So that's the Atmo drum. It has two versions. And now let's look at the processing. I will turn off everything so that we can see how it was built. With the freeze, just like that, it sounds like this. Almost brutal in a way, clipping also, like really crazy signal. So now with the EQ on top, I turned on oversampling also to be clean in this process. Then I have the auto filter, auto pen. Then drum bass. Then a grain delay. The grain delay, I use it sometimes to just change timbre of sounds. I think it's a fun move. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It works on tonal synthesizers as well as drums, which is quite nice. I also changed the rhythm here, because if you check, this is turned on 100% wet. If I don't have it 100% wet, it sounds different. So I turn it off now so that we can compare. And now with. Yeah, so, and then with the limiter, of course, on, to avoid any unwanted peaks, but I think this was already quite low so that it doesn't really hit, but maybe just from time to time. And then here I have a little filter. Just a little band pass to make it softer. And then I have a filter automation with a notch. I do this quite often to just have some movement going on. As you can hear, it's going away slightly, then it's coming in slightly. With a notch, it's a nice way, it's an elegant way, I think. And then the delay, actually, both of them add the actual rhythm. Let's go to a part where it's louder, so but I think actually it will come here when it gets louder, so I will turn the EQ on. So, and then this delay, which is turned to this 1, it's very, very low only on the wet signal, but it adds this little rhythmic detail. And then, yeah, I had this EQ with the gain increased to 12. And here I have another auto filter automation, which sometimes takes away the high frequencies and sometimes gives it back in with a triangle wave. And then a drum bass for more punch. And then here there is this part where I use the shifter. And let's show it. I have to turn it on, of course. Yeah, and then I have also, together with the shifter, I activated, delay as well, to make it fuse together more, the wet and the dry signal. And as it gets more quiet when the shifter is on, I also automated the volume so that the volume is even. And then I have some arrangement moves again with the filters here. So let's listen to it in the context, maybe from here. Yeah, it's really a part where this drum gets highlighted. I think when you listen to this drum by itself, it's quite dirty and kind of ugly, but in the whole context, it works very well. Yeah, and then here I have another little funny element. It's the so-called flap. There are 2 different versions, also pitch shifted with a shifter. I will turn off some of the processing so that we can hear it. So that's how it sounds. And now I realized that it's panned. So I wanted to compensate that with this utility, with a balance to 14 left, so that it's more in the middle. Then I have this EQ8 to enhance the high frequencies. And then a drum bass. Some arrangement with the filters. An EQ. And what adds the final character is actually this shifter, where the rate is turned up to super fast and the amount is up to 5 kilohertz. And that's how this psychedelic fart character is added. Psychedelic alien fart character. Yeah, and that's basically it already for this element. And also for the drums. Let's go into the tonal elements. Here I added a bass layer, which has a connection to this bass synth you will hear here. So it's really connected. I will play them together. And because they are connected, I just duplicated the bass layer, the bass line itself, and just changed the patch of the operator here a little bit, like some different envelopes, and also different courses. Here it's 1, 8, 4, and in the original one I have 1, 8, 7. So yeah, 4, 1, 8, it would be in the correct order. So yeah, let's listen to it also maybe with the oscillators one by one. Yeah, and I think it's really just a variation of the other one. It's again also here this additive synthesis with this one stacked on top, the D one, but also here it's very subtle only. And I have this echo as well inside, and here a filter automation, and then a delay which goes off, which we already just heard when I was playing it, to just enhance the arrangement for the break. Also here I have a move with the shifter when the delay goes off. Yeah, and that's where the break comes. Yeah, and that's basically it. Then I have a repetition of it where it's higher also to enhance the whole feeling. And then here let's go into the other bass layer, which I also just duplicated basically and changed the whole patch again. Also here, as you can see, we have course 12, 8, 18, so that's different as well. And when we look at the envelopes, for example, here I have a longer attack here as well, and that's what makes it a little bit different. Then I have an EQ on top because there were some harsher overtones. I didn't want to sound so harsh, so then I have this auto filter also going up and down a little bit, and some arrangement which I didn't do in the end, and also a delay which goes up, and yeah, that's from the other patch, so it could be removed as well. Yeah, and then also some, oh, that was my cat jumping on the table. Here I think, yeah, filtering out the synth in the end, and just a little opening of the space in total. Here with the vintage verb again. Yeah, and it vanished in the background. Then I have a resampled track here. I am pretty sure that I just resampled this one or this one, because as far as I remember, I did it and then I reversed it, but I don't know it anymore exactly. Let's listen to it. And I used the Valhalla Shimmer on top, which is a beautiful effect reverb. It has a lot of character and it can appear in many different timbres, but it's definitely not always the best, but sometimes for FX reverb it's beautiful. So yeah, that's about this element, I think. Yeah, a low version of it. And then here we come to the flute solo. And the flute solo is the one which we just heard in the break. The flute solo is actually recorded with my Chinese Xiao flute, which is this beautiful instrument here. I decided that I want to use more and more instruments in my tracks because I find it's kind of a waste to be able to play and just not to use it in their own music, because I don't have hardware. I just recently bought the Ableton Move actually, but because I want to exercise finger drumming. But in general, I don't really have any hardware. And my hardware are my acoustic instruments. I actually collect traditional old instruments, and I also love my violin and my classical flute and all kinds of other instruments, or the piano behind me. But yeah, I find it like it adds such a beautiful human touch, and why should I not use this kind of acoustic synthesizer if I have it available? So yeah, you will hear more and more of that in the future. And yeah, let's look at the project. Here I played this melody, and I think, let's see, which one is it? Yeah, I pitched both actually. So as you can see here, it's +2 semitones and then -11 cents. And here I just duplicated the signal and pitched it up so that we have this nice interval. Yeah, and I have pitched the two voices to the right and to the left a little bit, and also have different EQ curves for those, and also different phaser settings, because I wanted to be a little bit trippy, like going around in the stereo field. And then on top I have a compressor. It hits quite hard, but you cannot really hear it, which is important when you use a compressor. It just should correct the signal, but not be too audible. I would argue that I probably already almost overdid it in this case, but I think in the end I don't really hear it when I hear the track in the end, so it kind of worked. But it's quite strong how it hits, I think, or ducks when I look at the indicator. Then here I also added an echo for trippiness. And some space also. And then here, let's see, I think the grain delay was not used. Yeah, it was not used in the end. Okay, so now I also did a little zipper. No, it's a whisper, of course. Let's listen to it. Senses. Yeah, because it's complementary senses. And here I have several moves. I removed like the low sub bass, which we really don't need for this whisper. It's very classic that microphones just record sub bass, which just steal away headroom for the real bass line and kick drum. So when you record samples or things, it's always very smart to just remove that stuff, because then you will ensure that your kick drum and the bass line really punch. Otherwise, you steal away some space for them and they will punch less. Very basic. Then what I like to do sometimes with voices and also with whispers is to use the cabinet and the amp in combination, which is quite an odd combination, I think, but it's just a way to make sound a bit more boxy. So let's just listen to the whisper without that stuff. Senses. So that's how it sounds without it. Senses. Also without the phaser maybe. And then with the cabinet, I just, it almost sounds like a high cut, like a low pass. Senses. And then I redo it basically with the amp, because it adds high frequencies. Senses. But it starts to sound boxy, and that's what I like. Then some trippiness with the autopan. Senses. And some autofilter cutting in the high frequencies again. Senses. Which is crazy, because afterwards I added an EQ to enhance the high frequency. So I just could have looked to see that I actually had a filter on here and just leave this fourth 4 and delete this one. Would have been fine, you know. But sometimes in the process, things get wild and chaotic, especially when you're in a hurry. And I was in a hurry in a way, so that's what happens. Then I have the phaser for extra trippiness. Or no, it's not. It's a doubler actually. I just realized when I heard and listened, and I was like, "That's not a phaser." Yeah, it just adds more stereo information basically. And then again, the Valhalla shimmer for some effects, noisy reverb. And then here we come for the triller. Let's play it. So what I did here basically is that I played one arpeggio, or let's say several ones, and I picked the most beautiful ones. And for this lane, for example, I have these 4, and then I have different 4 over here. They have different pitch. Here the right panned one, for example, is this one. And that's the left panned one. And I can also hear that it's both pitched, and we can see it's both pitched by 2 semitones to make it fitting to the tonality of the track again. And yeah, together, basically here we can see also there's some phasing going on, different EQ curves. And then over here it's just compressed, a delay on top, volume automation, and supermassive. Also, I guess, yeah, for the arrangement here it gets more towards the end. And then also a filter automation. Yeah, and that's basically it for this beautiful element. And also, what is important to say, I didn't record it with the Chinese Xiao flute in the end, because the Chinese Xiao flute is limited in terms of tonality. It has 1 scale, and to be flexible in scale, I also have, of course, another flute, which I love to play, which is the classical flute. And yeah, I tend to mix the instruments also. I think in this track, probably nobody would have noticed that I did it. So it's really just, yeah, a nice trick to expand the tonality. Yeah, and then when we look at the next one, this is the original flute triller. I think from the same lane also this other one originated. I tend to just record 1 chunk of stuff. I just let the track play, and then I play with the instruments, and then I cut out the parts which I like and put them into another context, or duplicate them, consolidate, loop, whatever. And that's what I did here as well, so that's why it's all very similar. And also you can see this was the original signal. And then I resampled it because this one is called Flute Triller. And this one as well, it's not called Bass 6 anymore. It also doesn't make sense that this is Bass 6, but it's the kind of a preset name which I set up at some point without thinking. I'm not really good with project template presets. I just do it differently every time. That's why I didn't really take care of it anymore. And this triller here, I was really looking forward to show you this one, because I did a very funky move. When I deactivate the processing on this, you can see that without it, it's just like that. So, as you can hear, the whole processing in terms of that it gets like a chord, basically, it happens with an effect and not with the voices themselves. And this effect is the Valhalla space modulator. I really liked it because it's quite a unique one. I will duplicate it. So right now, as you can hear, it is this strange mystic chord. And now I'm going to show you what you can actually do with it. And I will change the rate and the depth, and you just hear what happens. And I will loop it as well. Yeah, and now we already got another nice chord, which is in a similar manner. It's like a 1 octave down, basically. And I think it's a very, very nice trick. It works in a way like the grain delay. I sometimes do these kinds of moves with the grain delay as well, just add some tonality on top. But this one is, of course, sounding slightly different, and it's such a nice trick, really. So with the Valhalla shimmer and the echo on top, it sounds like this. Yeah, and that's for the triller. Now let's come to the atmosphere. This one, for example, let's hear how it was built. It was built from this sample, which is actually the same sample which I also used for the, where was it? Atmo drum, for this one. So what I did is a lot of processing to achieve this very different sound. First off, I used the spectral resonator in granular mode. You will probably hear almost nothing. And now, next step, I made it louder with the EQ. So yeah, I basically completely destroyed the original signal. Then I added an Ube mod. And the Ube mod is also from Valhalla. Very nice effect, I think, very, very trippy, with the mix turned up, feedback very low here in this case. Ube mod turned up to 65 times. And the slow depth also turned up. Now, still, we can hear barely anything. So let's go to the next step. Here I have modulated the pitch so that it goes up and down with the rate on 2.23 hertz and also the 5 kilohertz. So now it was clipping hard, so that's why I used the compressor as well, because the signal is hell of dynamic and really not controllable. And now to make it louder, I added the amp. Now we finally hear something. Wow. And now with the supermassive. This setting, I really love it, because it's like a delay, but also like a reverb, and it sounds super organic. Yeah, and then an Ube mod on top again. And now we finally hear something. So the Ube mod does the actual work together with the supermassive. So from a like almost no signal, we went to some kind of signal, which is really fun sometimes, to just really destroy something completely so that it's really not what it used to be in the beginning, and then just try to grab the essence of it and make it louder and then again destroy it completely. That's what I did over here. So yeah, I have almost like very similar settings like on the other Uber mode, which I used previously, also a few effects before that. And what I added is the diffusion here, as you can see. Because of the diffusion, it sounds so noisy. Without, it sounds like this. And then I think all else, maybe warp, I'm not sure anymore. No, the warp didn't change at all. So it's really just the diffusion turned on and everything else here changed some things, but that's it basically. Yeah, and then some arrangement with the utility, as always. And then here the next one, the swoosh. It's just a simple noise, just an effect to enhance the drop. It comes in now. Yeah, so what happens here is I have this noise, then I have a notch filter going through the noise again to make it more organic. Then I have an EQ low cut filter basically. Then, and this is the hard piece of the move here, it starts over here, and then it just opens up with a resonance at 41%. And additionally on top it has the rhythmic sign at 1/16 and then goes back. And here in the second swoosh, for example, I changed it to 1/32. Yeah, and then I have for the extra trippiness some phaser added on top, and of course the effect delay, the effect reverb, I mean, the Valhalla shimmer. And then also I added this auto pen, which adds some rhythm on top of the 16th rhythm over here, but only slightly, and especially after the note played, so when the tail, the release, is playing. Yeah, and then I have another atmosphere playing over here, for example. Organic crackle. And here, for example, let's hear it without all the processing. What I did basically, because I'm producing a lot at airports, the original sample was actually recorded at an airport when I was waiting for my plane for boarding. So I just recorded the sample with a laptop, and as you hear, it's like tremendously a lot of bass. It's also due to the fact that I pitched it down to -24 semitones, so 2 octaves down. So this needed to be cut really badly, and I added these phasers on top for the left and right because I panned it once again. And then first thing what I did is add a vocoder, and this completely changes the signal. I used this noise mode and put this little dot right into the left bottom corner. Here you can see how it changes depending on where it's positioned. And then I added the shimmer again, FX reverb. I always use the shimmer on big stereo. It always starts up in mono, I think. But why do I use a reverb when it's in mono? Maybe you want it for certain cases. I'm sure that there are smart use cases, but for me it doesn't really make sense. In this case, at least. So then we have the shifter. Here I just changed the chorus down a little bit. Then I added the EQ to make it louder. And another filter automation with a notch. And another shimmer. Once again. And I think also the first shimmer, which I turned on, I changed some things in it, because when you, let me show you what I mean, because when you change the size of the room, for example, or the diffusion and the feedback, things really change crazy, like really, really intensively. Because, for example, so when the diffusion is up, it's just a noisy reverb, basically. But when the diffusion is down, it starts to be a little bit like a delay. And then also with the size down, it gets even more like that. It gets like really weird, like the delayed signal is kind of noisy and also swell-like. With other signals, you could hear it even better with like strong transients and stuff, but I just tell it to you like right here, because it's really very, very nice knowledge to know about the Valhalla shimmer, because sometimes people just open it and are like, okay, it's always the same reverb, I cannot really adjust anything interesting about it. But when you think about it in a different way and just try to not use it as a reverb, it gets very interesting. Of course, I also love it when it's just used as a reverb, but just for background information, it can be very helpful also. Then I have another crackle kind of sound. This one, let's see what it was originally. Yeah, it must be me just doing something with my hands and some kind of object, I guess. Something which I recorded in my studio. And then I just panned it to the left and right, changed the position of the sample to enhance the stereo feeling. And this time I didn't use any phaser, because the signal can be in stereo also like this. Then I added a low cut, the shimmer. Yeah, and here, for example, I also turned the diffusion down and the size up. So it doesn't really sound like this very long church kind of reverb, but differently, like kind of trippy, weird. And then I added this autopan, which goes up and down. Yeah, and that's the track, basically. Thanks for joining me on this one. I hope you liked it and maybe it inspired you to work on something new yourself. And yeah, don't forget to hit the bell and maybe like the video, and see you on the next one.